Hi everybody, thanks for coming in. Good chance to cool off. It's a bit hotter than I think we all thought it would be today. So I'd just like to introduce, you can see PraSaga up here, an incredible company who are making some just mind-blowing technology in the blockchain space. We've had a few, I know Jay was here last night as well with us, which was fantastic, but it's just a chance to get a bit of an insight, so when you're speaking to them later on and over the next few days, you kind of know areas that might resonate with you from a business perspective, partnerships, investment, anything that might trigger that sort of conversation. So I'll stop waffling on, and delighted to introduce PraSaga and welcome on board again.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, appreciate that. Hello everybody, my name is Michael Holdman and I am the founder and CEO of PraSaga. We are a Swiss foundation. We are a single layer blockchain. There will never be a layer 2 necessary in order to try to solve issues of scale. We've solved a lot of things. First thing, I need a show of hands, because this is where the project is taken. Who here is just happy as all they can be because of the positive effects that the increase in inflation has had over the past year and a half? Okay. So, what we want to get to at some point is a monetary supply that's global, that will have a zero inflation and zero deflation, where we can, in real time, dynamically regulate the supply to the transactions that are necessary just to have complete or settle all transactions that are on the blockchain or done globally at any given time, to decrease the fees in order for those transactions to happen. Kind of like Satoshi Nakamoto's original intent of Bitcoin was to be a way to transfer value or money from one person to another person without having to pay all the fees that are associated with SWIFT and the different exchanges and Forex and such like that. So in order to get there, though, it's a very, very complex thing. We actually started this project back in 2017. We wrote our first white paper in September of that year. Jay Moore, co-founder and CMO, and our other co-founder, David Bieberman, who's busy writing code right now back in the United States. So PraSaga is a very, very ambitious project, and it's a project that the team that we have put together can do, because we have done big things for the past 6 decades. Next slide, please. So it's actually 6 decades of experience. We're not quite that old yet. But this is our 6th decade in tech. I started pulling cable and installing phone systems in 1978 for my father's interconnect telephone company. David Bieberman, the first code he wrote that did something, he was 14 years old in 1978, it was something called WYSIWYG. He couldn't write legibly, so he wrote a program for Dr. Wang of Wang Computers. He went to school with her daughter in high school. And it's what you see is what you get. What you see on the computer screen is what you get on the printer. Over the time, myself, Dave or Jay have been involved in the innovations that have happened over in technology, whether it be writing the protocols that make TCP and IP do something. When we were sitting at NIST in the mid-'80s with Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn, we are responsible for Web 1. If it wasn't for the protocols and the works that we did, it would not exist. In the 90s, writing the high-performance IP stack, and writing in 2000 the algorithms under commission from Gateway for dynamic load balance in the web servers. Without the work that this team did, there would be no Web 2. Now what we've done is we're about to introduce the infrastructure for Web 3. And I can emphatically say that this is the infrastructure that will make Web 3 a reality, instead of having all the issues that we're seeing right now within the blockchain and such. So we've been here a long time. Jay, his innovation has come over the past 30 years now in video gaming. Jay's his largest company, we've had 21 startups. We've had 8 exits. We're doing a whole lot better than Sand Hill Road. And Jay's largest was something called Garage Games. It was the very first ever open gaming engine. You used to, if you wanted a game developer, you had to go to the studios, pay $1 million to use a gaming engine. Jay had an engine, it was $100. He built a network of 250,000 developers. Problem was something called ease of use. Jay sold his company in 2004 to Barry Diller for $70 million. Unity, which is based on garage games and their approach, IPO'd for $32 billion. Jay was command line and script. Unity is drag and drop, GUIs. So there's a difference in there, and how do you have ease of use? How do you get past that? Next slide, please. So, one of the things that we have lived on, and as separately as founders of companies and working at companies and such, but we've always been on this phrase right here, this quote by Einstein: "We cannot solve problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." And that really resonates here in the blockchain space. If you continually look to try to fix something that's unfixable, it doesn't matter how much energy you put towards it, it's not going to happen. And in blockchain, that happens to be the smart contract. Everybody's trying to fix the scale, get a blockchain up to that level of being able to do, and our mission here to be the foundation for all transactions, all global transactions, financial or other. Because a transaction in the world is not just purchasing a wiper blade, but it's actually moving the wiper blade from one account to another. So you have to, that's considered a transaction. So what we had to do was first look at the root of the problem. And we've known since 1967, when a computer scientist from IBM wrote a little formula. And that formula was to figure out where in the mainframe you could do parallel processes. You could do them multiple processes at the same time, and where they would serialize. You could only do one at a time. It would queue, and it had to go in specific order. It was Dr. Amdahl, and it's called Amdahl's law, and this is computer law. And again, 1967, we've known this since. So we looked at this, and we've been 4 years in, and I can have conversations with anybody. I've got about 350 plus pages and over 160,000 plus words of notes looking at the first 100 pages, all the layer 1 blockchains out there, all the projects, the white papers, then looking at the code, noticing that what they say in the white papers is nowhere in the code, and impossible to do. So there was a lot to figure out here. Next slide, please. So, what we're going to do though, instead of talk about tech, that's going to be pretty much it. We're going to talk about mission and purpose. And the logo, which was designed by Julie Moore here, it looks like 2 infinity symbols. That's actually 4 P's. And those P's stand for what we are. You've got purpose, you've got people, you've got planet, and you have philanthropy. As a foundation and an open source and nonprofit, we work for and towards those 4 P's. So the first thing is purpose, right? Now, I always say, you cannot change the world if your only interest is in changing your life. You have to have a higher purpose in order to do big things. And that's one of the things that we've dedicated ourselves to. I've been on international open standards bodies for the past 2 decades. So has David Bieberman. Jay Moore has always been looking for, how do we create a better planet? How do we create and give to the world instead of taking from the world? So the purpose of this is to do just that, to ensure that we have an underlying foundation, not only that, but also a money supply policy that's going to allow us to have a stabilized currency based on the economic activity of the economy itself. Next slide, please. So, people. There's 8 billion people in the world. There's a lot of people outside of the developed countries that have to be addressed. There's so much brilliance that we're missing. There's so many advances that we're missing because we can't reach, or the people in the rainforests in Indonesia, in South America, the jungles in Africa, or the ice fields up in Siberia. They can't reach the global commerce. They can't reach the global community. But there's minds. The mind is a very, very beautiful thing. And in those minds, there's a lot of creativity and there's a lot of thought. We have to be able to expand. We have to be able to get out there and allow them to come, because it's going to only advance us as an entire global society. So this project is for all 8 billion plus people in the world. And that's what we're focused on. Next slide, please. Planet. That's kind of important, right? And we do have effects of climate change coming from, there's man-caused effects that are accelerating climate change. But we also have to balance that with how do we live. And you know, one of the things that's always big in blockchain, and it kind of upsets me that the people in this industry fight amongst themselves between, do we do proof of stake because it's low energy, or proof of work? Well, instead of fighting between those two, my question is, what is the entire carbon footprint and cost, energy cost, of the entire global banking system? That's what we should be looking at, right? It's inefficient. It's a highly, it takes a lot of power, and it produces a lot of carbon and puts a lot of carbon in. All of these things are great, but they've also, technology has caught up with them and surpassed them sometimes in their usage. So how do we move into that world? And how do we create this without having that centralized control? Right now, all of the central banks are moving to this modern monetary theory. So a government can't have debt. Well, I don't really know how that works. You can't just keep printing money and printing money and printing money. We're seeing the effects of that right now. So we have to make sure, though, that what we're doing is good for the planet. That's one of the problems that we solve for as well. The biggest knock we have now in the United States is on Bitcoin, and I believe it's worldwide in the amount of energy it uses to do proof of work. Well, the way that we've architected what we have will still use the same amount of power, or a little more, than Bitcoin does right now. But they're producing 1 block every 10 minutes. We will be producing 40,000 blocks every 10 minutes per single Bitcoin block. So although we're using the same amount of power, we're making that power much more efficient. And that's the only way that we can do. And yes, someday we will have nuclear power all over the place. I think France is one of the leaders in nuclear power. It's very clean, it's very efficient, it's a hell of a lot safer than it was when Chernobyl happened, right? So we have to start to look at realistic approaches. Wind and solar are fantastic, renewable energies. But we've noticed with the ice storms that we had down in Texas, they're not as reliable as we'd like them to be. So we have to look at many different alternatives in order to do this. But the idea is, how do we pull this together? And again, how do we pull this together as a community? How do we pull this together as a world? How do those of us with advantage help out those that don't have the advantage and bring them into the fold? Because you never know. The cure for cancer could be somewhere out in the rainforest in Indonesia, with somebody that just has not had the opportunity to express themselves or be part of what our global community is. Next slide, please. And finally, philanthropy. You know, this is one of the things, again, what they wanted to do. Satoshi Nakamoto wanted Bitcoin to be a person-to-person payment platform for the world. The problem is that Wall Street took over. You had all the kids that came out that didn't want to pay their dues in order to do the hedge fund, so they found an unregulated speculative asset that they could go out and start to trade. Then you had people like Novogratz and Saylor that jumped in, and they're just manipulating this market incredibly. I mean, I saw when Bitcoin hit 60 and it started to go down, and all of a sudden Saylor came out, I think it was, at 38 and said, I just bought 2,800 more Bitcoin. Well, yeah, no shit, because you just sold at 60, dumped the market, and made a whole lot of money. Because of that money, you bought that Bitcoin at 28 or even lower. So how do we get past that? How do we get this out into the hands of the entire world? That we have to look at, and that's part of the revenue stream that we have. We will tax the gas fee or the transaction fee. That's the only revenue the foundation will make. We have 3 buckets that has to go to. One is budget for the global operations. Number 2 is through philanthropy. And the philanthropy, we want to work with philanthropic organizations globally so that we're going to choose which ones. This has to be, we have to make sure they're legitimate, and we have to get this money out and the coin out and everything into the hands of the people in the world. It's not going to be us that do it. There's people that are already out there that are doing very, very good. How do we support them? That's part of the mission of the foundation. And that, then, last slide, please. So PraSaga, a project given to the world to make the world a better place for all. And we are giving this. This is 6 decades of knowledge, experience that we have put together. All of the things that we've written, all of the things that we've innovated on, are now putting it into a nice, neat package and presented it to the world. That's what we're here doing, presenting it to you. If you want it, it's here, but it's up to the world whether or not they want to take advantage of what this technology is, what the platform is. And just to let you know, we just did bring on 2 economists this year. One was Stephen Moore, and he was actually Trump's pick for the Fed. He was a nominee for the Fed. He's a budget policy expert. He just brought on a gentleman, his name is Lawrence White. Lawrence White is, we just announced on Monday, professor at George Mason University, PhD at UCLA in 1982, has a money policy and banking policy expert his entire career, and has designed currencies for governments. He's the one that came to me and said, Mike, I want to be part of this project, because if you can give me a method of exchange at a 0% inflation over a method of exchange at 8% inflation, I will take that any day. You have your stores of value. You have all of the ways to purchase stocks and such like that and do Forex. Let's have a method of exchange that allows us to, that holds value and allows us to actually thrive. And not just us, but the entire world. And that's what this project is, and I thank you for your time. And we are doing a raise. We're in a 25 million right now direct. And we also just signed with US Capital Global, and they're doing a special purpose vehicle, an SPV, for 100 million with us. And we have a lot of larger funds now that under their LPs cannot purchase token, but they can go into the SPV, and the SPV can purchase token. So, thank you. And if there's any questions, please ask.
So when are you going to be tradable?
So right now we'll have private testnet. We're expecting by September. Once we're sure to get the bugs worked out of that, we'll go to public testnet. And as soon as we know that a Solana incident is going to happen, we're going to have to restart the chain. I'd say it could be right away in October. It could be Q1 of 2023.
Are you based on Solana?
No, absolutely not. No, we had to be native. In fact, Solana was our first choice. But we read the Solana white paper and saw they do parallel processing, then read the code and said there's no way that they'll ever be able to do parallel processing. That's what you got to do, right? And one of the problems with a lot of funds that I'm finding out, nobody has engineers, right? You need computer engineers and network engineers if you want to be in this game, because you have to understand the tech.
Can you launch, is this a protocol where you can launch other tokens on your platform, on your blockchain?
So you don't have to, right? You can. So what we've done by eliminating smart contracts is we've implemented, not to get technical, but it's the same underlying foundation that's the architecture for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS 10. So we actually we just got allowed our patent in the United States. We're now filing DLA Piper's doing all our patent work. Deloitte is our global accounting. The patent is going to be gifted to the world, though, through the foundation. We've had the patent jumped by the likes of IBM and Microsoft and such over the years. So this time it's a defensive patent that we filed for the world.
Okay, so no further tokens.
No, you don't need. I mean, because I can actually move. I'm sorry. I can move possession of the asset from one account to the other. I'm not going and putting it in a smart contract and moving it to another smart contract, another smart contract. So I can actually do that. But if you want to have a token number that represents that share, or if you want to have a token number that represents that wiper blade, or if you just want to have a token for something, yeah, you can. An object in an account can be anything.
Okay, so you're basically not technically, but fundamentally more a fork of Bitcoin than of Ethereum, for example, right?
Yeah. So we're a single layer. Bitcoin would be a single
Yes,
layer,
that's
right?
right,
You have and Elon actually coined this phrase when he was doing something with Kathy and Dorsey, the D word or something like that. It was called. It was a podcast that they did. And he was looking, he wants a single layer blockchain where the de facto layer 2s are just the exchanges, the on and off ramps, and that's exactly what we are.
That will be my last question. Do you have layer 2 projects already working on yours, or do you want to?
No, there's no need for layer 2.
We do have applications being built.
Yeah, we have applications being built, right?
Okay.
So we have a few EV manufacturers right now that are looking for us for their next production runs. You can't change a supply chain in the middle of a production run, right? But on the new ones, yes, you can. We are talking to a few pharma companies about phase 1 and phase 2 testing, and amongst other things. Our focus, because of the fact that we are based on, fee on the transaction, is high velocity of transactions. Supply chain is $15 trillion a year in transaction volume, so that's a good base to start from for a fee.
Maybe one last question. Then I'll stop. I know probably other ones.
Go ahead.
Where do you see yourself fitting in the multifaceted verse of cryptocurrencies now?
Well, we're not trying to be I call them crypto commodities. There's not one that you can use as a currency. I mean, I asked Pomp, I asked Tone Vase, all of these guys. When was the last time you bought a stick of gum with Bitcoin?
I do every day.
Yeah, do you? Well, you're one of them. Then you don't have, then you don't care about the rise or fall in value.
I do. It's
right?
painful right now.
Exactly. Well, especially accepting it is painful right now, right?
No, that's fun.
Yeah.
I know it's gonna go up in
Yeah.
value.
It'll go up someday. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to create that stable. It comes down to once there's trust, and this is what the currencies are all based on trust. The fiats are, right? I trust that the value will hold, that somebody will accept this tomorrow, and that's where we're at. As soon as the enterprise, first of all, trusts that if I sell services and accept this today, that's going to hold the value when I go to procure services tomorrow. That's when it'll be used. And again, I always say nobody went to B of A or UBS or HSBC in 1999 and said, I want to do all of my banking from my phone. It was given to us. It was introduced to us. It was simple. They don't know what the technology is underneath. Again, ease of use, right? The difference between 70 million and 32 billion. And that's exactly what we've created, is that ease of use. You don't have to know it's a blockchain. You just have to know that I can trust that if I do accept this as a currency, and today, that I can use it tomorrow and it'll hold the same value and the people will trust that. And that's when we win.
So I'll get a little more technical.
Anyone else? All right. Well, hey, thank you very much. We're here all weekend. I want to thank everybody for coming and participating in this event. It's our first time in Monaco, and I hope we're invited back. I really did have a great time, and we're looking forward to the rest of the weekend, and then seeing F1 in Las Vegas next year.
Oh. Yeah, the one on Sunday. Well, that's a good idea. That's a great idea.